The myth of fear, the geometry of the soul. Most people live their lives as if they are the authors of their fate, yet they wonder why they keep falling into the same traps, the same suffering, and the same dead ends. What if I told you that the most critical decision of your existence has already been made, in a place that you have forgotten, through a mechanism that you don't yet understand? Plato's myth of Ear is not a fairy tale. It is the oldest and most sophisticated account of the near-death experience in human history. It is a technical manual for the event horizon of the soul, the threshold of the invisible. Plato chooses to seal his monumental work, the Republic Politia, not with a dry academic epilogue, but with a myth of profound biological and spiritual significance. Having demonstrated throughout the Republic that justice is the natural health of the soul in this life, he now turns his gaze toward the eternal. We began this series of videos about the Greek gods and Greek mythology, a journey deep into the tunnels of the human soul, and we decoded the monsters, the Medusa and the Hydra, realizing that they aren't ancient beasts, but the fragmented states of our own consciousness when it falls into fear and rage. And then we started aligning ourselves with the Olympian frequencies, the order of Zeus, the structure of Hera, the strategic brilliance of Athena and her wisdom. We experience the ecstasy of Dionysus, where logic melts, only to find our footing in the most critical anchors. Hades, the invisible root of our own existence, and Hermes, the very architect of our consciousness, who led us safely to the very edge of the bardo. But now, the hand of Hermes Psychopompos lets us go. At the threshold of Ananke, which means necessity. And there, our soul stands alone. There's no guide anymore. But we need a witness, someone who crossed the event horizon and returned to reveal what happens when the ego dissolves and the cosmic machinery begins to turn. Socrates offers us this witness. Ear, the son of Armenius. Ear is not a mystic or a philosopher. He is a common soldier. He is a man of action. He falls into battle and appears dead for 12 days. And just before the funeral fire is about to be lit, Ear awakens and he returns to life, not just to survive, but to report, to tell us a story. Here we realize one thing, that death is not an end, it is a displacement of motion. The soul, as a self-moving entity, leaves the vessel of the body and enters a new form of geometry. And in this realm, judgment is not a punishment handed down by some vengeful deity. It is the natural classification of your soul's quality. You are not sent to face your fate. You are magnetically drawn to the very frequency you have cultivated. The judgment and ontological descent. Ear's narrative begins in a demonios topos, which means a supernatural threshold place. And there the soul stands face to face with its deeds. And the judges, after delivering their verdict, command the just to proceed to the right and upwards through the heavens, while the unjust are sent to the left and downwards. When Ear's turn came, the judges ordered him to observe everything unfolding before him, so that he might serve as a messenger to humanity. as a witness. Everything transpires with mathematical tenfold precision. Reward and retribution last for 1,000 years, which is equivalent to 10 human lifespans of 100 years each. And here observes the souls camping in a meadow as if it was a festival, kind of. Those arriving from Earth, they are dusty and dry as a bone, weep as they recount all their sufferings that they went through, while those descending from the heavens, they are pure and glowing, and they're speaking of a beauty beyond words. However, there is a category of souls that the very opening of this exit refuses to accept, and these are the incurable, the aniati in Greek. When the tyrant Archetypes attempted to come out, the opening let out an unearthly lowing sound that was blocking the way. And here philosophy meets cosmology. Archetypes is the soul that has completely lost Hermes, the Logos, and its depth, its connection with Hades, and he has become so heterokinetic that is moved by external passions rather than internal reason, that the system can no longer even recycle him. And then entities bind him and drag him over the aspalathus, which are thorns that shred the very essence of the soul before casting him forever into Tartarus. The ancient Greek tar generates words that are related to tarato, tarasso, thrato, which means to shatter, to break, thripto, which means to crumble into pieces, tarachi, turmoil, taraxias, troublemaker, trachis, wrath, tarantas, which is troubled sea. Tartarus is total cosmic entropy. It is the point where information decomposes. So Archetypes is not merely being punished here. He ceases to be even a part of the great year of the Megas Eniαυτός. His motion becomes chaotic and aimless. It is a static anomaly within the universal harmony. And he serves as the ultimate cautionary example for every soul that is preparing to choose its next incarnation. The spindle of necessity, the mechanics of the all. After 7 days in the field, the souls depart for the next phase, and here Ear describes a pillar of light that is connected to the celestial revolution, and from the ends of this light hangs the spindle of necessity, the spindle of Ananke. What is Ananke? Etymologically, the word is linked to ancho, which means to be squeezed, to constrict something. It is the law that maintains cosmic cohesion, the force that prevents chaos from dissolving form. The spindle has a hollow spiral within which 7 other loops are nested, and it's a perfect representation of the planetary spheres rotating at different speeds, yet sharing a common internal harmony. Upon each circle sits a siren, and each emits a single sound, a single note, and from that synthesis of the 8 sounds, the harmony of the spheres is produced. And this is the key here. The universe is not mute, it is motion, it is a living musical organism. For a soul to return or reincarnate, it must tune itself to this frequency. Around the spindle, seated on white thrones, are the three daughters of necessity, who are the Moirai, the Fates. We have Lachesis from Lanthano, which means to obtain by lot, and she represents the past and the possibilities already granted to us. We have Clotho, which means to spin. She weaves the present, the moment of action. And Atropos from alpha plus trepo, it means the unturnable, the irrevocable future, the consequences that cannot be avoided. The Fates sing in unison with the Sirens, weaving time into space, and here Ear observes something, that the souls are not passive recipients, they must present themselves before Lachesis. And an intermediary of the Logos appears and gives and scatters all the lots. No divinity shall cast lots to you, but you shall choose your own destiny. Atia elomenou Theos anetios, which means the blame lies with the chooser. God is blameless. Responsibility lies to the one who chooses. God, or necessity, and the universe bear no responsibility for the quality of the life you will select. Proairesis, the choice of lives. This is where the most dramatic part of Ear's testimony begins, because souls are not merely called to endure their fate, but to compose it. It is made perfectly clear that virtue has no master. If you honor it, it shall be yours. If you neglect it, then you will have to bear the consequences. At that moment, every kind of life is spread before them. Tyrannies that are ending in ruin, riches that are leading to isolation, but also lives of animals, of eagles, lions, of absolutely everything. And Ear observes something profound. Most souls choose based on their unfulfilled desires and their complexes, based on their previous lives. Their choice is not actually free. It is a reaction to the past. The unphilosophical souls chose lives that seemed interesting to them without calculating the misery hidden within, while those who had been tested by hardship in the previous lives chose more and more carefully, refusing to be deceived. Socrates intervenes here to give us the philosophical key. This is the moment of maximum danger. If a person has not cultivated their consciousness, that is Hermes, for example, and has not known his depth, Hades, and has not seen their masks, Dionysus, and has lived an unexamined life, they will be blinded by the surface of things and choose a life only to realize later in horror that the life they chose hides utter misery. And then the soul of Odysseus appears. Odysseus is the last to choose. His soul, having been healed of ambition through countless pains and having translated every experience into knowledge, searches for a very long time. He takes his time. He does not seek anything. He seeks a life that everyone else had discarded, the life of a quiet man who minds his own business. A simple man that is far from the noise of anything, of the noise of power, of impressions, of illusions, of vanity, of everything. And upon finding it, he says, I would have made the same choice over and over again, even if I had been drawn first to choose. To understand why Odysseus makes this choice, we must remember who he is. His name, according to etymology, is linked to the verb odysome, which means he who causes outrage, but also he who endures outrage. He is the man at the heart of the cosmic storm in the realm of Poseidon. As we analyzed before, Poseidon's realm, the sea, is the stormy field of life itself, the ocean of emotions, of instincts, that overwhelming consciousness. The adventures of Odysseus were not merely historical or geographical, they were adventures of consciousness. He survived Scylla and Charybdis, extreme dualities, defeated Circe, the witch Circe, and that represents animalistic instincts. And he returns for the final battle. But to choose the quiet life, to get to that point, he first had to confront the most inflated idol of himself, which is Polyphemus. The Cyclop Polyphemus in Odyssey that Odysseus kills is the personification of the illusory ego. His name, Polyphemus, means he who has much fame. He who feeds on external noise and recognition. He possesses only one eye. And this is an elliptical vision that sees only matter, materialism, lacking the double vision, the sensory and noetic vision that is granted by Athena. When Odysseus declares his name, Utis, which means no one, no body, he performs the ultimate initiation. To defeat the blinded ego that seeks much fame, you must first become one with yourself. You must shed the masks of the king, of the warrior, of the hero, of whatever, and by killing the dominance of Polyphemus within him, Odysseus is then liberated. He managed to liberate his insight, and he became a unified man who needs no external theater to confirm his existence. Before arriving at this ultimate moment of choice at the Spindle of Necessity, he had already, in his previous life, he had managed to do something else. He had to kill Antinous. Antinous is the leader of the admirers of Penelope. And this is not just an enemy. He is, as his name suggests, the Antinous, which means anti-mind, anti-consciousness. He is the force that takes over our inner house, consumes the soul's powers, and inverts right reason. By killing Antinous, Odysseus became the absolute master of autokinesia, which means self-motion. In the Odyssey, absolutely nothing is accidental. The names of the admirers of Penelope are psychological attributes of a soul possessed by passions. Let's see some of the names. Evrymachus, wide plus battle, external aggression, and the vanity of imposition. Amphinomus, it means around plus law, so moral wavering, recognizing what is right by lacking the courage to act. Then another one is Agelaus, which means leading, ago, plus people. So here we have demagoguery, provocation, and the need for social validation. Then we have Leodis, who is smooth plus form. Here we have hypocrisy and pseudo-spirituality and slyness. Ctesippus means possession plus horse, possessiveness and materialism. Odysseus does not just kill men, he cleanses his inner polity, and only then the soul can return to Penelope. And Penelope is linked etymologically to pini, which means a web, and ops, which means eye, face. So Penelope is the weaving of consciousness. It is the soul's ability to weave and unweave the world of forms until it finds truth. And this is the completion of the Nostos, of returning home. Odysseus does not just return to Ithaca, he returns to his center. It is a return to the self. He has transmuted pain into wisdom, and he understands that true autokinesia is not found in ruling others in the outside world, but in ruling oneself, the inner world. After analyzing all this, it is a necessary opportunity to address those who claim that Greek literature is racist or exclusionary or whatever. To those who attempt to rewrite these myths to serve modern political agendas or inclusivity quotas based on external characteristics, know this, that you are acting exactly like the admirers of Penelope. You are usurping a spiritual edifice that does not belong to you. You break into the inner house of a sacred tradition, consuming its symbolic essence without understanding its law. And by reducing these metaphysical archetypes to the level of modern identity politics and racism or whatever, you're not being inclusive, you are being a reductionist, and you are murdering the symbol to serve the shadow. Greek pedia does not speak of any colors of skin, but of the quality of the soul, and the whiteness of the light or the darkness of the Tartarus are not racial categories, they are vibrational states. When you replace the universal noetic character of the Greek myth with fleeting political agendas, you're drinking the water of Ameletas river, of oblivion, before you have even lived. Greek thought is the heritage of the unified human consciousness, not a tool for social engineering. It is an invitation to transcend the biological, the political, the social, to reach something higher and understand the cosmos. So those who reduce these cosmic principles to social labels are only projecting their own limitations. Sadly, some have understood nothing at all. So, the river Ameletas and the return. Once the souls have made their choice and Atropos has rendered the thread of their lives irrevocable, they are led to the plane of Lethe, the plane of oblivion. This is a barren space, void of anything. It's a place where time itself seems to have stilled. And there, at the banks of the river Ameletas, they are called to drink. And here we have the final great trial of consciousness. The water of this river cannot be held by any vessel. Whoever drinks from it forgets everything. And here observes a crucial detail. The unphilosophical, those who were not taught inner alertness, self-consciousness, self-awareness, drink excessively out of their thirst and sink into absolute lethe. However, the one who possesses pedia and awareness drinks with measure, and he preserves a spark of mnemosine, of memory, and this spark will later become the anamnesis, in their lives, the recollection of the ideas in the world above our world. At midnight, there is an explosion, and the souls are all suddenly catapulted upwards like shooting stars to be incarnated to their new bodies. Ere, who was forbidden from drinking the water, opens his eyes upon the funeral pyre. It is morning, the circle has closed, but the knowledge has been saved. Ere came back to this life to tell us what he experienced. The geometry of motion and the fall of the soul. For Plato, motion is not merely a displacement in space. It is the external expression of an internal state. To understand the fate of Odysseus and the choice of Odysseus, we must examine how Plato defines motion. In the Timaeus dialogue, he reveals that both the world's soul and the human soul are composed of two primary motions. The motion of the same, of the Tauton, which is circular and has to do with pure identity. And this is the sovereign motion of the mind, of the nous. It is a perfect self-returning circle where the beginning and the end coincide. And it represents stability within motion. It is the ability of the consciousness to remain centered and unified while observing the whole. And it acts as a gravitational pull of the spirit that draws the soul toward its absolute center, the very source of being. And then we have the motion of the Thateron, which is the motion of the other. It is the realm of diversity. It is the realm of the senses and the realm of the constant flux. So unlike the circle, this motion is fragmented. And this is the force of multiplicity, a cosmic scattering that tends to twist the soul away from its center, dragging it toward the chaotic periphery of matter and the illusions of becoming and the world of the senses. When the soul incarnates, its circles are interrupted, disrupted. And Plato describes in the Timaeus that the soul's entry into the body causes a violent shock. The upright circular motions of the mind bend, become distorted, and turn chaotic. Remember here what we analyzed during the episode of Hephaestus, the fall of the divine intellect into the density of matter. Just as Hephaestus became lame upon hitting the earth, the soul's perfect rotation is fractured, forcing the mind to labor through the resistance and the distortions of the physical world. The ascending soul. This is the soul that through pedia and self-examination manages to tame the disordered motions of the senses and restore its inner circle to its natural cosmic orbit. This soul becomes autokinetic, self-moving, in the sense of absolute self-mastery. The descending soul, Tartarus, Odysseus and the incurables have suffered a total distortion of motion. The circles of their souls have been totally broken. They no longer move circularly around the center, around the logos, but move more and more and more linearly and violently outward toward matter. This linear motion is the motion of entropy. In Tartarus, the soul is not tortured by a vengeful god, but by its own inability to circle itself. It is a rough and distorted motion that leads to the very dissolution of its own information. And this is why Odysseus chooses the quiet life. He realized that this excessive motion of the world, of ambition, of battles, of power, is nothing but unnecessary noise which pulls the soul away from its very orbit. By choosing stillness, he chooses to restore the circular motion of his mind, of his soul, aligning his microcosm with the macrocosm and the eternal evolution of the spindle of necessity. The physics of the soul, centripetal versus centrifugal. To comprehend ascent or descent, we must view the soul as a dynamic field of forces. We have the centripetal force, which is the nous, and this is the soul's tendency to be drawn towards the center, toward the source of being. And this is the motion of the Tauton, of the same, as described in the Timaeus. This force keeps the soul in orbit around the truth, preventing it from vanishing into chaos. The centrifugal force, which is our own distortions of how we understand reality, this is the soul's tendency to be thrown away from its center toward the periphery of matter and senses, of trauma, of greed, of whatever. And this is the motion of the other, which is the Thateron. When passion, anger, greed, egoism, all of these things dominate, the centrifugal force prevails. To understand the incurables like Odysseus, we must examine the state of the soul through a modern lens. Psychopathy is the ultimate manifestation of the centrifugal force. In the psychopathic brain, we observe a literal fragmentation. A modern neuroscience reveals that while the calculating parts of the brain, the called intellect, may be highly functional, the areas that are responsible for empathy, for moral judgment, for emotional integration are often shrunken or disconnected or totally non-existent anymore. And this is a physical reflection of the broken circles that Plato described. And here we must be very careful not to confuse intellect with intelligence. Intellect, diania in Greek, can be a cold, linear, and highly efficient tool. And a psychopath can have a brilliant intellect, and using it like a sharp blade to navigate the world of matter and create havoc. True intelligence, which is gnosis, the highest form of consciousness, is the ability to perceive the whole, understand the harmony, harmonize yourself with this harmony, and understand the law of the very center of the cosmos. The psychopath possesses a fragmented intellect that has lost its centripetal anchor. And because they are totally disconnected from the logos, the center, their internal geometry is strictly linear and predatory. They do not circle around any truth. They move in a straight line toward their objectives or their desire and destroying everything else in their path. What happened to Odysseus in Tartarus is the spiral culmination of this biological state. His soul has undergone a total entropic dissolution. His information, his identity as a harmonious being has been totally shredded. It is non-existent. He's no longer a circle, but a chaotic trajectory into the void. He's incurable because the bridge between his calculating intellect and his divine mind has been permanently severed. On the other hand, Odysseus has understood the mechanics of the universe. His adventures in the Sea of Poseidon were a struggle to tame the centrifugal force of the passions, of the sirens, of the lotus eaters, of the Circe. That all of these things were trying to divert him from his course. By choosing the quiet life for his next life, Odysseus chooses the ultimate centripetal state. He withdraws from the noise of the periphery of fame and power to strengthen his inner axis. And he stabilizes his motion, aligning himself with the rotation of the Spindle of Necessity. Now here, it is crucial to understand that this is not an escape from life. It is the actual fulfillment of it. Because we are speaking of a man who has literally experienced everything: war, wandering, the divine, temptation, and absolute loss. Absolutely everything. His choice is not out of ignorance or weakness, but of profound experience. Having exhausted the centrifugal illusions of the world, he now chooses the density of silence. His quiet life is the hard-earned piece of the soul that has integrated its journey and no longer needs the external noise to confirm its existence. His soul no longer departs, his soul returns. The Nostos is the victory of the mind's centripetal force over the centrifugal dissolution of the ego. It is the upward path that is mentioned by Socrates, the restoration of the smooth circular motion that renders the soul immortal and undisturbed. The salvation of the myth and the eternal friendship. And so, Glafkon, the myth was saved and not lost, says Socrates. The word esothi, was saved, carries immense weight. The myth was saved because Ir returned it to recount it, but also because we, by listening to it, can be saved from the fragmentation of ignorance. In this series, we do not just view the gods as external entities or simple fairy tales, as so many out there believe, dismissing them as mere little stories for the primitive. On the contrary, we have recognized them as the universal frequencies of our own soul. We understood inner order through Zeus and the sovereignty of the Logos. We confronted the forms of matter and structure through Hera. We activated the strategic intelligence of Athena to see beyond appearances. We experienced ecstasy and the deconstruction of the old self through Dionysus. Hades taught us not to fear the darkness of our depths, but to understand that it is the very tool of our very existence. Hermes taught us how to translate the flow of life into meaning and acting as the ultimate weaver of consciousness. And now we have here coming to show us that all this knowledge, the entire pantheon we carry within us, is judged in one singular moment, the moment of Proairesis, which means willful choice. If we understand that the soul is immortal and capable of enduring all things, if we follow the upward path, then we shall always be friends with ourselves and with the gods and with the cosmos, because the gods are no longer strangers. They are the very forces that align our microcosm with the harmony of the spheres. The series of the gods finishes here. but the journey of the soul does not, because every end is just the preparation for a new circle within the great year, within the megas enneavtos of the universe. So keep mnemosini alive, drink with measure from the Ameletas river, and remember that the blame lies with the chooser. There is no one else to be blamed.